Hello and welcome to this episode of the Alien Familiar RPG podcast. I am Clayton, and it's just me today. Before we get started, you can find show notes and more at alienfamiliar.com. You can email us at alienfamiliarmedia@gmail.com. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/alienfamiliar. And if you would like to help us out with hosting this show, you can do so at patreon.com/alienfamiliarmedia, where if you enjoy our content, any help would be greatly appreciated. So thank you for joining me today. Today I'm going to be talking about online tabletop role-playing games, going over some of my experiences over the past 15, 16 years that I've been doing them, and talk about the current program that I'm currently using, and give some tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way that I feel makes the games go a bit smoother. So I've been using various virtual tabletops since about 2004. I started off on a program called OpenRPG. After that, I moved on to a program called MapTools, and currently I am using Roll20.net for all of my online gaming needs. I'm also using, I have used TeamSpeak in the past, back in the mid to late aughts. But now I'm pretty much on Discord as my platform of choice for using voice over IP. I wish I had some statistics on how much time I've actually spent playing role-playing games on virtual tabletops, because it's been a lot. I've been a member of Roll20 since 2013, and that site keeps some records of how much time you have played, how many people you have played with. It's one of those sites that has analytics that are in the form of achievements that you can unlock. Some of the statistics that I have access to is that I have nearly 1,500 hours in Roll20. I have been in games with somewhere between 100 and 250 people. There's an achievement for 100 and there's an achievement for 250. And I've reached the 100, but I have not reached the 250. There are several virtual tabletop programs available in various formats. I just use Roll20 because, it's the one that I've been using the longest, and I have a subscription with Roll20. Fantasy Grounds is the other major virtual tabletop program that I'm aware of that has a lot of support. The others include Tabletop Simulator. Astral is a relatively new one that's coming about, but whenever I was doing some research, there were way more virtual tabletops available than I ever knew. So I really can't compare directly, because the only one that I've really spent significant time in has been Roll20. I don't use MapTools anymore, just because the way that you have to run the server that you are on, that your game is on, locally on your computer. And whenever I stopped playing on it, there were a lot of problems with that server being accessed by other people. You generally had to have a VPN set up in order to have that work properly and have everybody in your group on that VPN. So that was a bit of a pain, that it was more work than what I was willing to put into it in order to have a consistent group. So that's why I switched over to Roll20 whenever it became available. And I'm pretty sure that the Kickstarter for Roll20 ended around 2012, and I became a member of it in 2013. I know that most of the others have some form of a free way that you can play it. Fantasy Grounds has a free option to it where you can be a player in a game as long as the game master has purchased the product. Fantasy Grounds is a program you download onto your computer and you run it from your computer, and everybody else just joins you. I use Roll20 partially because it is browser based. Everything is online. So I know that I don't have to, if I get a new computer, I don't need to purchase again and re-download the software. Although that is an outdated critique that I have of Fantasy Grounds, because my Fantasy Grounds is now on Steam. So as long as you purchase it through one of like a Steam or some other program like it, you don't need to. You would only need to purchase it once. It's definitely on my list of things to do to try out the others, but I'm really reticent to spend money on programs, and I feel like in order to get a full shake on Fantasy Grounds in particular, I would need to spend money in order to be a DM, in order to really know whether or not I would like it better than Roll20. So I'm really not going to go too much into the differences between the two, because I just don't know. I do know that Roll20's free version is, it allows you to be a game master for up to 2 games. You can have 2 games live on its servers at the same time. Another feature that comes with the free version of Roll20 is that you have access to the forums. And whenever you create a game, you create your own subset of forums that are only available and visible to the players in your games. And I typically use those forums for posting world information, posting house rules, posting session recaps, posting experience, loot, things like that. I found the learning curve for Roll20 not to be very bad at all, although it's hard for me to remember exactly what it was like 7 years ago whenever I started using it. So some of it might be just my own bias because I have used it so much over the past several years. But I do remember it being pretty easy to get the hang of. And then part of that might have been the fact that I had been used to using other virtual tabletops before it. So I had experience with importing maps, importing creatures. I knew how long it would take to put a creature into the program so that I could have all of the stats there, so that I could just use all of the functionality in Roll20 in order to use a particular monster's stats or a particular system's stats. If you are just wanting to be a player, I found that on all virtual tabletops, there are way more players looking for games than there are game masters willing to run. That mirrors what it's like role-playing in the real world. But if you're playing in the real world, there's always going to be somebody in the group who finally says, okay, I will be the one to run for us. In on virtual tabletop, I don't feel like there's as many people who are going off and doing the experimentation to become a game master. It's a lot easier to try out something new by being a game master with a group of friends who you know well, and you know well enough that they're going to basically cut you some slack for being a brand new GM. I feel it would be harder to be a first-time GM on a virtual tabletop. Yes, you can say and let your players know, hey, I'm doing this for the first time, but you don't know how your characters or how your players are going to treat you because you are a new GM. If you're going to be a game master on a virtual tabletop, you're going to have a lot more options, because I don't think I have ever advertised for a game on a virtual tabletop that didn't fill up with players enough to play the game, and fill up quickly. Especially for any system, but especially for systems that are a little bit more obscure. I find that there are plenty of players out there either craving a new system to play, or they've played the system that you're wanting to run once or twice. They've enjoyed it, but there's just no other GMs out there playing that game on the virtual tabletop. I know right now on Roll20, their D&D is the main game that is on there. There's a lot of Pathfinder. But besides that, there's really not a whole lot of other systems that have games going on. I pretty frequently browse the looking for game section just to see what games are available. And I've said many times on the podcast that Savage Worlds is my favorite game system. And it's hard to find a Savage Worlds game on Roll20. Or I have been the GM of more games of Savage Worlds on Roll20 than I have seen advertised looking for players in the past year. So if you're looking to play a game that's not D&D, you're probably going to be searching for a long time. If you are going to be DMing a game or game mastering a game, you're not going to have any problems finding a group of players who are wanting to play that game, regardless of what system it is. So Roll20 has a lot of features in it, a lot of features that work very well. But one feature that I just haven't ever liked in Roll20 is the voice chat. It might be better now. I don't know because I haven't tried it in a couple of years now, but I just find that Discord is so much easier for running the voice chat because Discord is built for voice chat and text chat. And that is its functionality. That's what it's made for. And so it does it so much better. It gives you so much more control over the different chat streams. You can break, which is what I do. I break up the text chat into several different streams, and then I have some control over, having a main voice chat. And then if I need to, I can create a private voice chat. So if I need to do a secret sidebar with one or more of the players during the course of a session, very easy to create and have those people set aside, which isn't something that Roll20 has built into it. You have one text chat and you have one voice chat. Besides just using it during the course of the session, I also use Discord between sessions. I use that for just talking about the game. And I mean, we're all gamers, so we're going to have some interests that overlap, and it's great for forging online friendships outside of the game. I use Discord to keep track of the people who I have played with in the games, because that's another thing that particularly in Roll20 doesn't have a lot of depth to it. You have where you can see several of the last people you have been in contact with, but it has a limited amount of space to hold those people. So as you talk to more people, as you play more games with more people, the people at the bottom of the list kind of get dropped off. And on Discord, it's really nice to be able to have this catalog of people who you have played with over the years. And if, for instance, I've played in a game a couple of years ago with somebody, we had a lot of fun, and I'm getting ready to play and run another game that I think that this player would be a perfect fit for. I can just send a quick message over Discord to that player and say, hey, I've got this game I'm getting ready to run. I would love to play role-playing games with you again. Are you available on this day at this time to play? And you can go from there and keep and maintain those friendships that you have built up in Roll20. I use Discord to help maintain those friendships, and Discord can be used similarly in any game, virtual tabletop game or video game. It's all the same, but that's particularly why I like using Discord in conjunction with Roll20. And Discord is nice because it's free. I don't have to pay anything in order to create my own private server that has its own text chat logs and its own voice over IP channels. I can create as many of those as I need and just invite people to it. In most of my games, my core chat channels, I have several of them. I have a general channel that's just for any out of game questions, just shooting the shit or actually asking questions about what's going on. I generally have a channel for in-character role play. That is to give players the opportunity to have conversations with other players in character whenever we're not playing the game on our designated night at our designated times. I also generally have an artwork channel that I post pictures to of what the players are seeing. I also use it, or the players also use it to post pictures of their characters. I have a channel for the game status and absences where I keep track of if I'm going to be late for a session or if I'm canceling a session, and other players can let me know that way whether or not if something comes up and they're not going to be able to make it. There are a couple other channels that I might create if it's needed, particularly in D&D games. I create a channel for loot, just to post and keep track of who is getting what items, because it can get a little confusing when there is a particular item that several characters want, or two characters want, keeping track of who has what. So I use loot channels for that. I also typically have a downtime activities channel that is for in-character describing what your character is doing between adventures. Not necessarily between sessions, but often between sessions. But just the different things that a character does when they aren't adventuring. So besides Roll20 and Discord, I still use OneNote for keeping track of the vast majority of my session notes. And I use OneNote identically to how I do a face-to-face group. I keep the same tabs, I keep the same sections. I'm pretty sure I've talked about that in the past, so I'm not going to go too deep into detail for that. Whenever I play virtual tabletops, I found that there are several pieces of advice that I would love for every player to please follow. Since we're doing social distancing, right now I am working from home, and there are a lot of people who are working from home for the first time, and conference calls and telemeetings and stuff like that are becoming a daily part of many people's lives. And a lot of these tips I've picked up over the past 15, 16 years of doing virtual tabletops, where it's the type of things that are useful in these virtual meetings. I advise everybody to use push to talk, especially if you've got something going on in the background that is going to be picked up by your mic. Things that might be in the background is if you don't have headphones, your speakers are going to be picked up by your mic. I recommend everybody have a good pair of headphones that you can wear so that you can hear what everybody else is saying and nobody gets echoes of what all is being said and then hearing it again a few seconds delayed, and it just becomes a cacophony of noise where you can't understand what's being said. So that's why I encourage both headphones and push to talk, is to prevent all of that feedback from ruining the game, because I have a hard time hearing a lot of times. The way my hearing works is I have a lot of difficulty picking up individual people speaking. Even in real life, I have this difficulty. And whenever I'm playing online, whenever I've got people in a voice chat all talking and there's no directionality, all of the noise is coming from one place, from the speakers or from the headphones, I can't identify voices, and I can't identify what is being said to me. So that's why I encourage push to talk and headphones, because at the very least it minimizes that. I also recommend not using either a tablet or a phone. Desktops, laptops, they are far better for playing virtual tabletops than tablets and phones, just because you have the ability to click, double click, right click, which you don't have on a tablet and phone. I find it's harder to zoom in, particularly Roll20. Its interface for tablet and phone isn't great. If you're a player, you can get by on it, but as a game master, I think it's impossible to play in a game as a game master on either a tablet or a phone. I've been forced to, due to either power outage or just internet outage, been forced to do it on my phone, and it sucks. If my internet goes out, I'm just going to tether my phone to my desktop computer and get my internet that way. I've seen some people recommend using video for a virtual tabletop. I don't particularly favor it, but I understand why you would want to do it. It is a lot easier to gauge a group of players to determine whether or not they are having fun with what you are playing, if you can actually see their faces and gauge their reactions. But personally, where I am out in the middle of southeastern Ohio in the woods, I don't have great internet, and even watching YouTube, I don't get HD quality video. It's always downgraded and it's always grainy. And then you add on top of that trying to stream video of several different people. Webcams aren't nearly as good as the HD cameras that record most most of the YouTube content I watch. And so it just becomes a mess. And I can kind of make out people's features whenever I've watched video, like over Discord and in Roll20 itself. Roll20 has video option as well. But where I am, my internet connection just sucks, and I just can't watch video. I don't get the benefit of it, so I personally don't use it. People talking over each other tends to be a lot more of a problem on a virtual tabletop, even than sitting face to face, because whenever you're sitting with somebody face to face, you have all the verbal and non-verbal cues that a person is getting ready to talk or somebody is actually speaking. And I am able to, as a person, because of my hearing, whenever we've got a group of people sitting around a table in a physical location, I can turn my head to pay a particular attention to one person or another person. So talking over people isn't as bad of a deal. But over virtual tabletop, I cannot understand when more than one person is talking. It's all just gobbledygook, gibberish noise that I cannot parse out. And you're going to be talking over each other more often than not whenever you're playing online. I recommend that all players and GMs kind of get used to, whenever you are talking, taking a pause after you finish saying something to give the players or the other people an opportunity, one, to react to you, and two, just to check to make sure that, okay, I'm pausing here to allow you to interject or to take control of the spotlight for a little while before I begin speaking again. It's really easy for one person to completely dominate the stream if you don't have the common courtesy to pause after you get done talking. And I have thankfully not encountered hardly any players who are so dominant that they have to be muted in order to allow other people to speak. That's one of the benefits of Discord, is if somebody really is completely hogging the spotlight, if it's my channel that I have created, I can manipulate that person's, their feed. I can mute them. I can make it so that, a particular player has dominance in the conversation, their settings in Discord, to make sure that, I can set it so that the DM, whenever the DM speaks, everybody else is either muted or completely cut out. So that's how that's how I would handle an obnoxiously dominant player if it was such an issue that talking with them, if they were dominating the issue or were dominating the game and talking to them really didn't help. That is basically the nuclear option to help make sure that that person does respect the time of the other players. Other general advice, back to in Roll20, or any virtual tabletop, it can go faster than a physical tabletop as far as the rolls and combat, because you have the ability to build in macros, and a lot of systems have it built into them that you have a set of macros already set up, and you have character sheets built to automatically make every roll that you need. So I'm currently in a D&D game. I have a character sheet, and on my character sheet, I have all of my stats. I have all of my gear. I have all of my spells. And whenever I want to make an attack with a firebolt, for instance, I just click firebolt. It automatically makes my attack roll. It automatically does my damage. And it's just one click. It's not me looking at my sheet, seeing what I need, physically picking up the dice, rolling the dice, calculating my attack rolls, calculating my damage, telling the DM. It's just so much quicker. It can potentially be so much quicker whenever you do it and you use built-in macros or APIs to do a lot of the heavy lifting of calculation for role-playing games. Some of the more obscure systems don't automatically have those macros built into them. And if you are typing these out, it is so much slower than a physical tabletop. And even if you're a fast typer, it seems like it is slower to type out the formula that the program needs in order to make a particular roll, because it's not second nature that like the way that you make a roll in Roll20 is you type /roll and then you type the dice formula, for instance, 1d20 plus 7 if you're making some sort of a skill check or an attack roll. So what I do if I am running a system that doesn't have those built-in macros, and if the virtual tabletop doesn't have that functionality where you can program for yourself the macros that you want to use. As far as I'm aware, most of them do have this ability in them, but I mean, sometimes it's a little bit harder. What I typically do if I'm in that situation, I will have a separate document open where I have my most commonly made rolls already typed out that I've made in between sessions of the commands to do to do all of the rolls that I normally commonly use. And then it's just a matter of seeing which one I need, copying and pasting it over into the commands for the particular virtual tabletop. So all of those tips are for players and game masters who are just kind of getting their feet wet in virtual tabletops and trying to get things to run a little bit smoother. I've got several GM specific tips, because even on virtual tabletops, I prefer to GM rather than play. And as a GM on virtual tabletops, prep time is longer. It takes more time to input all of your stuff into another program than it is to write it out, to create a new NPC, to write a new story, to write a new adventure. It is to create a map. It is so much longer. It takes so much longer to do it on a virtual tabletop. Even if you're buying a module, it's going to take longer to do. It's going to take longer to prep for it than if you're just reading a module out of a book. I do the majority of my campaign prep in the lead up to the game. For instance, for my Thursday game that I've got going on, in the lead up to the start of the campaign, I found a bunch of maps and I uploaded those to Roll20. And these generic maps I use for Random encounters, I also use them for dungeons that I have to come up with on the fly. It allows a little bit more flexibility just to have a set of prearranged maps to do things on. I personally don't like making maps even in a physical, everybody sitting around the table game, or virtually. I hate making the maps. Whenever I'm physically at a table, I'm fine with just drawing a quick map on the battle map that I have brought. But for virtual games, I find it's so much easier just to do an image search on Google for, quote, battle map, and then some sort of a keyword like forest, cave, crevasse, temple, city. You type those in and you will get many, 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 many results. Not all of them are going to be exactly what you need, but there are a lot of really awesome free resources out there that are just a few clicks away, and it saves you so much time in prep. You don't have to make each map that you're going to use. Back whenever I did make maps, I typically used MapTool for making the maps. MapTool is still a program that I have on my computer just because it does have that functionality of being a map making program in addition to being a virtual tabletop. But that was like 5 years ago that I was still making maps, so I just don't make maps anymore. Whenever I first started playing Roll20, I did use the drawing tools that are included on it to make some maps, but it's just too slow for my tastes. Even with my crappy internet connection, easier and quicker to just upload a 2 megabyte map from my hard drive onto Roll20 and resize it as the battle map than it is for me to take the time to draw a brand new map. Whenever I'm designing adventures, I find the map and then I write the adventure. If I know kind of the locale that I want my adventure to take place in, I will type into Google those keywords to get that particular style of map. But I do not design the battle map after I've written the adventure. I find a good battle map and then I write the adventure to cater to that map. So right now I've got several gigs of D&D battle maps on my hard drive that I have accumulated over years and years. I need to curate them because the folder itself is completely unwieldy. I go looking for caves, so I scroll down to the part where I've got them sorted alphabetically, and I've got like 36 caves that are just labeled Cave 1, Cave 2, Cave 3, Cave 4, all the way up to Cave 36. I need to reorganize that shit. So in addition to having to take extra time to prep, if you're going to game master on virtual tabletop, I would say having a second monitor for your computer. It's not absolutely necessary, but it is one step away from absolutely necessary. I currently have two monitors, and I wish I had a third because I need that visual real estate for all of the information that I have in front of me whenever I'm role playing a game. Whenever I'm physically sitting at a table, I have my laptop, I have my books open, I have some notes in front of me, and I have a GM screen with notes on the GM screen. And whenever I'm playing virtually, it's a very similar setup. I have Roll20 open in a browser. I have a second browser window open with tabs of rules that I might need to look up, images that I might want to drag and drop pretty quickly into Discord. I have up Discord. I have, if there's any PDFs that I have that are relevant to the adventure, I have those up. I have OneNote open. And then I have the physical books. I have my player's handbook sitting next to me. I have my Dungeons Master's Guide. I have my monster manual open up next to me. And I might even also on my computer have a couple of other resources that are a library of image assets that I've got on my computer. Not just maps, but I might have pictures of a bunch of NPCs that I just have a stock folder of NPCs of various types of creatures. There are a ton of online resources for map making and treasure generation, random generation tables, random name generators. I might have any number of those open at a particular time whenever I'm playing online. So that's why I have 2 completely full monitors, and I wish I had a third. And if I had a third, I might wish I had a fourth. So where do I find all this? Well, Google is your friend. There are quite a few awesome Reddits. I'm not even gonna hazard a guess as to how many Reddits there are dedicated to tabletop role-playing games. Every game that is even moderately popular has its own subreddit. There are subreddits. There are multiple subreddits for map assets and also completed maps themselves. There are Facebook groups that are similarly set up. The main source of most of the maps that I am pulling from now are from a Facebook group called D&D/RPG maps. I just have that in my feed, and I have a couple of Reddits in my Reddit feed where I'm just browsing either Facebook or Reddit, and I see a cool map. I open it up, save it to my computer, and that's why I have several gigs of images on my computer that are horribly sorted, but I have available if I ever need them for a virtual tabletop game. If you are doing that particularly for battle maps, just finding them online, there are some criteria that I look for, that I favor whenever I'm doing searches or whenever I'm looking to save something. Highest priority maps that, one, look good. I don't want any ugly maps, but besides just looking good, if they don't have a grid, oh, that's so wonderful. I don't have to do the pain in the ass resizing whenever I drag it into Roll20 and it has Roll20's superimposed grid over it, and it doesn't line up with the grid that of the map that I've downloaded. So first thing I look for are maps that don't have grids built into them. If the grid's not built into them, I can just kind of eyeball approximately how big I want the map to be and just set it down and ready to go. I don't have to take the time aligning it to align correctly with the Roll20 grid. As I am saving maps, if they do already have the grid on them, I love it when the person who is posting the map identifies either in the file name or in their post how big the map is. That way I don't have to spend the time to count out, okay, this grid is 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Okay, this grid is 45 long by 30 tall. I don't have to do that counting myself. And every time I save a file, I label it. If it has a grid on it, I label what the grid is, so that whenever I'm in the heat of the moment and I need to quickly pull a map over to Roll20, I have that information ready. I can make the grid the size that it needs to go, and I can, if I need to resize the map to be the proper size for the grid, for the map that I'm going to be using, all the information is right there. I don't have to do anything on the fly. One side effect that I have noticed by playing games on virtual tabletop is I've noticed how much I fudge dice rolls. I didn't know I do it as much as I do in a physical, whenever I'm sitting around a physical table. I feel like my reason for fudging dice rolls is to try to enhance the fun and make sure that everybody at the table, they don't have a wild swing where the monsters are suddenly just rolling crit after crit after crit. Because it's not fun to be a player on the receiving end of that, because sometimes the dice really are out to kill the players, and there's nothing the GM can do about a 20 coming up on a D20 die roll and it's a critical hit. In a virtual tabletop, you see exactly how, if you are doing that, if you are fudging dice rolls, you see exactly how often you are fudging dice rolls, because the dice rolls are posted. They are for everyone to see. And it makes the games a lot deadlier, because there isn't that obfuscation of the GM being able to kind of massage something so that, like, oh, yeah, you got hit. It wasn't a critical though. And the monster rolled, it rolled minimum damage. So, so your character who was at 10 hit points, you didn't get hit too bad. You got hit for 7, so you're still up. Whereas in a virtual tabletop, I hit a button and it posts for everyone to see, oh, look, that monster not only did that monster get a crit, but then it rolled maximum damage on its damage. And the reason why I'm bringing this particular thing up is because in my Thursday game, session before last, and the previous session, I could not roll less than a 15 on monster attack rolls to save my player characters' lives. They had encounters that, by the math of D&D 5th edition, should have been medium difficulty encounters, but every round the monsters were either rolling incredibly high, not only to hit, but also to damage, or they were rolling crits. At one point I rolled 4 crits out of 5 rolls for monsters, and I was dropping players left and right. And I don't like killing player characters. I will do it whenever it is dramatic. I feel it's dramatically appropriate, but I really don't like killing players because players invest their time and their energy into their characters, and I don't want this awesome hero that they have created to die like a bitch just because this goblin managed to roll a critical hit at just the wrong time that it takes them down, and then the next couple of rounds they manage to roll shit on their death saving throws, and there's not really a whole lot that can be done when all of these rolls are done out in the open and everybody can see that, oh crap, things are going bad, and then there's nothing we can do about it. And I feel like that's the main reason why I fudge dice rolls, is when things are going bad, the players realize things are going bad and they need that escape hatch. I fudge dice rolls to give them that escape hatch. So there are ways to fudge numbers in a virtual tabletop. The easiest way to do this is to fudge the amount of hit points that an enemy has. Most players don't have all of the hit points of all of the monsters memorized. On Roll20, I can make it hidden how many hit points a particular monster has at any particular time. I do not have that information available to the players. I do not have the players able to see how many hit points a monster has at any point. So that makes it a lot better. Even if the player themselves, and I'm pretty sure that some players do this, and I'm fine with this, I'm pretty sure that whenever we go into an encounter and the player hears we are fighting gnolls, I am sure that there are some players who have a copy of the monster manual. They open the monster manual up to the gnolls to see how many hit points, what the AC of the monster is, all of that, like how much their attack bonus is. But if they can't see exactly how much damage is going to each particular monster, the chaos of the fight, especially if you got multiple monsters, it becomes a lot harder to keep track of. So hit points is the main place where I will fudge dice rolls, even in Roll20. Like I said, the players are often I am pretty sure that I know a few players who are always looking up the monsters in the books whenever they encounter them. Sometimes, I'm fine with that, but sometimes as a GM, you really just want to have a surprise thrown at your players, something that they aren't going to be able to recognize. And this is an area where there is a strength for virtual tabletops. It is just as easy to reskin a monster in a virtual tabletop comparatively as it is to do it in a physical, everybody sitting around the table. All the game master needs to do is put up another picture. Put up a picture of a slightly different monster. Their DeviantArt is full of very, very cool looking monsters that don't have stats. And I could run just out of the monster manual and have an endless supply of monsters just by being able to post different pictures that I pull from online, different, very cool, very creepy, very scary, very serious looking monsters that look like they're going to eat player characters for breakfast. And in reality, they might have the same stats as the monster they just fought the previous session, but this is an entirely new monster because it has its own picture. Just in general, some of the benefits that I had a hard time working into the rest of this this podcast, that one of the other benefits of playing role-playing games over virtual tabletops is just how casual you can be during the game as far as what you're dressed, what you're wearing. You can sit and play your game in your pajamas. There's the convenience of not having to travel to go to somebody else's place. I personally prefer to have other people around me so that I can physically interact with them, so that I can see them, see all of their body language, all of the expressions live. But man, it is so convenient being able to just sit down at my computer 2 minutes before the game is supposed to start, log on, and just start playing. And you also gain the benefit of being able to play with such a much more diverse group of players than you can if you play only physically. Well, I don't know how many past games I have been in where I have had at least one player from another country joining in to play the game. For some reason, I'm not quite sure, but Australia seems to be an incredibly popular place for people to play virtual tabletop role-playing games, because in the past at least 4 games that I have been in, I have had 3 people from Australia in those games. Don't know why. So I've played with people from Australia, people from New Zealand, people from Germany, people from Great Britain, people from all across the US. I played with a guy from Brazil once. I played with somebody from, oh crap, now I can't remember where it was. It wasn't South Africa, but it was in the southern part of Africa at one point. So just being able to hear that variety of voices that are all getting together and playing this game. Personally, I love hearing accents because I like to play NPCs in my games with different accents, and it's a way to learn how to do other accents well. I'm always incredibly nervous, and I never will do an accent at the table of somebody from that place, but I will absolutely do accents emulating people I've played with in the past in games where there isn't somebody from that country there. It's just, I feel awkward. I know I'm doing a terrible accent, but if I'm with a bunch of people who aren't from that particular place, I feel a little bit safer that there's not going to be someone getting offended by this terrible accent that I'm doing whenever I try to do a terrible Australian accent or a terrible Irish or a terrible Scottish accent. I just feel a lot more confident in being able to do that accent after I've heard a real life person who speaks in that accent, and I've been able to do, as a player or a GM, pick up some of the really cool subtle nuances of those accents. Another benefit of playing virtually is the breadth of games that are available, and being able to play pretty much at any time because of people around the world are playing these games, and I can post a game to start at 11 a.m. my local time because, for instance, back before my current job, I worked the night shift. I could have a game set to start at 11 o'clock on Friday, my local time, and have plenty of other players who are available to play at that time. Or if I have just a short notice, I can probably find on Roll20 a pickup game in 10 minutes that is getting ready to play D&D, and we're just gonna go. We're gonna do a one shot. The flexibility of being able to do that is a huge draw for doing games online. A negative side of that is that it seems like it is so much more common to just get ghosted. Like, I have had many games just fall apart because the player just stopped showing up, and they just drop out of the group on Discord, and I don't have any way of getting in contact with them. They're just gone. There's no reason. There's no explanation as to why it was going on. Very often, real life comes up and people drop out of games. That's what happens in whether you're playing virtually or whether you're playing face to face. But sometimes I get the feeling that there's been something in the game that they didn't like, and it was something that they were quitting the game because of something that happened in the game, either something that I did or maybe something that another player did, or just some incompatibility in the group. And it's so easy to just ghost people and not ever hear any justification, any reasoning as to why that happened. And it's really hard to improve your game and make your play better if you don't have that really hard conversation of, man, I'm just not feeling this game. There's something about it that's bothering me. As hard as it is to sit through that and listen to, it is invaluable to me to hear why I'm not running a great game. Because I love this hobby. I want my players to have fun. And if there's something I'm doing that my players aren't having fun, I want to hear it. Not always will I agree with them, but I will listen to them. I want to hear the complaints. And if I've had so many games just end because players dropped out, no reasoning, no explanation, it just happens. So I think I'm about done. I don't want to go too much longer. This is definitely the longest solo episode that I've done so far. I do have a couple of geek things I want to share that I've discovered since the last time I did geek things. One of them is a YouTube channel called Fact Fiend with Carl Smallwood. I find it's an amazing channel just because it's a channel that does deep dives into geek and pop culture things, but it does a deep dive into some aspect of it that you don't hear about. That's the majority of the episodes. But the particular episodes that I want to recommend is if anybody is fascinated by kind of some of the goings on behind the scenes of YouTube channels, like how YouTube channels are made. There's a lot of little snippets that he does, like commenting on the culture of how YouTube of how YouTube videos are made, that I find incredibly fascinating, because I would really like to do a YouTube channel at some point, but it's not in the cards right now. So basically I'm doing some research on how that can be done by watching Fact Fiend. The other geek thing that I have is a video game remake. It is for Daggerfall Unity. There are a bunch of fans of The Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall that came out in 1996. There are a bunch of fans of that who are remaking Daggerfall in the Unity engine, and it is currently available for download if you want to play test it. I loved Daggerfall back in the day, and it's a blast being able to get back into it. Well, listeners, I think I've had enough of this bullshit. It's time for me to get to doing some virtual tabletop D&D prep. Thank you very much for listening.
This has been a production of Alien Familiar Media. You can find past episodes and more at alienfamiliar.com. You can email us at alienfamiliarmedia@gmail.com. This production is protected under a Creative Commons non-commercial attribution, no derivatives license. Music for this episode is Suburban Outlaw by Forget the Whale and can be found at freemusicarchive.org.